Hi, I'm Mike Bergeron with Production Systems at Panasonic, and I'm here to talk about KAIROS, our live IT IP production platform, to just kind of give you an overview of that again, and also to provide an update with some of the new features and hardware that we'll be adding to the system, which is deploying in the US and Europe now. So KAIROS takes advantage of not only GPU processing and being software enabled and running on a server, but it also utilizes the IP connectivity for control, streaming input and output, and the SMPTE 2110 standard on a 100 gig network, which allows for low latency and uncompressed signals as well. So we get a system that is driven by GPU processing, and so it has that kind of flexibility. All the imaging is uncompressed on the system, and it's fully customizable. And that's in terms of the IP and IP connectivity on both the 1 gig and the 100 gig network for all the inputs and outputs, but it's also completely flexible in the screen content that you produce. And that means you can produce screens of an arbitrary raster and as many layers as you like in any of the outputs. And we can do all this with a single frame of processing delay because of the efficiency of the code. Now we're utilizing gateways for the inputs and outputs, and that means that we have the ability to input and output any kind of raster, be that 720 or 4K or any computer screen. And we can also handle more streaming inputs and outputs, and that's something that we've added more recently. A big advantage of the GPU processing and that flexibility is that we can create custom content for a lot of the unusual screen shapes and sizes that we're seeing appearing more and more in the world. And that includes LED screens, edge blended projecting, or monitor walls. And because of the GPU processing of the outgoing content, we can make something that is a raster that's 32 by 9 or anything else that you might think of for ribbon, and we can still have the same kind of abilities to put in more layers and keys and picture-in-picture on that, and we don't introduce the latency and the added complexity of a screens processor that you'd normally have to use. So, as always, the main components of the KAIROS system are the KAIROS core and the KAIROS creator. Now, the core is Linux, and it's very reliable, meant to be up 24/7, but the creator is based on a desktop, and that can be either a PC-based or Mac, and that's meant to be easy to use. It's really a lot like working in Photoshop, but with moving video. The creator software is also useful as a soft panel, so it's really all you need to control the system. If you do want a touch panel, a panel with buttons and actual tactile feel, if you're an experienced TD, the KAIROS control is going to be very familiar to you. It looks like a 2ME panel, although there's as many MEs as you'd like. The simple system is just to take that core and the panel, if you're using it, and the control all on that control network, and you can just go directly in with the Flex modules with DeltaCast. And those don't utilize the 2110, but they're the easiest and the quickest way to get video in and out of KAIROS. Now, if you want to go to the next step and utilize the 2110 network, all I got to do is add that to it. It doesn't eliminate the use of the baseband inputs. It just adds to that. So now I can take advantage of a 2110 broadcast network that may already be in place, or I can just utilize a lot of other gateways. And that gives me the freedom to do things like send a 25 gig out to an endpoint box. And here's one, I'm showing one from Riedel. And that can have inputs and outputs as well as sync and an IP control or anything else you'd like to do. Really allows you to deploy the system on a campus in a very flexible way. So what's new with KAIROS? It's going to be a new software version 1.1, which is dropped already, and new hardware, which is coming very soon. For the new hardware, in addition to the KAIROS Core 100, we're introducing the KAIROS Core 1000 or the gold option. And that really is something with a larger GPU to give it more capacity to support more outputs and support more layers. But it also has a lot of functions that are standard, which would be optional in the entry-level system. The KAIROS Creator, which has been on a PC-based platform up until now, is now also available on the Mac. The other main thing that we've done is expand the canvas limits. And what that means is we go from, even though we can do any aspect ratio, our limit had been a maximum of 2 times HD across or 4K. And that's been expanded to be 4 times 4K across. And that allows us to also produce an 8K output image. And that would be able to work with both the KC1000 or the KC100. The other enhancement to the software is supporting more streaming inputs. And that includes SRT, RTSP, RTMP. And with that, that's going to allow us to have an on-prem system and enhance those inputs with remote inputs coming from something like the UE100 or the UE150 PTZ camera, which could just output an SRT stream over the network and have that come in on the control network and join the other sources on the KAIROS production. So what's the difference between the 100 and the 1000? There's a few things. One is that you have several options with the 100, the 4K, the canvas, and increasing from 24 by 12 to 32 by 16 for IO. But also that's limited to a maximum of 4 4K outputs. With the 1000, all those options become standard and the 4K outputs go from 4 to 5. Not to mention extension of the record times with the media player, and your 6 streaming inputs becomes 8 streaming inputs. And on top of that, you're just going to have more layers to work with. The other new things coming this March are the NMOS option key, which is now available. And that allows you to take advantage of the NMOS support, which is part of SMPTE 2110. And it provides really useful things like auto discovery of all your 2110 sources. And finally, the audio mixer option, which will now be available, taking advantage of the AES67 audio that is part of the 2110 network and giving you access to those sources so you can mix them, you can route them to any output, and you can even offer a mixed minus if that's going to a monitoring function. So all in all, we get to a pretty complex system that can be deployed, or a simple system where we can use the 2110 baseband inputs, streaming inputs and outputs, and all that on a single core, either the KAIROS Core 100 or the KAIROS Core 1000. And I will now send it to Harry Patel, who will show you the KAIROS system in action.
Thank you, Mike. So today we are going to go into our labs in Harrison, New Jersey, and see the KAIROS lab in production. By the way, I'm controlling everything that we have in our lab from home. Again, the system is set up in our labs in Harrison, New Jersey. So here, what we have set up is the equipment rack. That's on the right-hand side. That is where the KAIROS core is, while on the left-hand side is where our displays and control surfaces are. So in terms of the displays, top left is the multi-view 1 and top right is the multi-view 2. Multi-view 1 is catering to a 16 by 9 production, while multi-view 2 is catering to a 32 by 9 production. So the idea is, let's say if you have an LED screen or blended projector screen, you would like to manage that and also manage your iMag or remote feed. Point is, all of them could be processed directly from KAIROS from a single platform. By the way, the monitors that you see in the middle are the 2 outputs of that 32 by 9, outputting in 16 by 9 sort of aspect ratio. So you kind of get to see how that signal would be processed from KAIROS going into projectors or LED screens. The KAIROS control panel that you see is the KAIROS control panel that is, it looks like a 2ME panel. However, it's a lot more than that. There is lots of customization that can be done through the UI, and we will see that as we go through the demo. The KAIROS Creator is what I'm controlling remotely. The KAIROS Creator is a licensed software and could be installed on Mac or Windows, and you can have as many instances of it running as you like. Now, KAIROS Creator is a must required tool for you to control the switcher, and anything and everything you need to control can be controlled from the software UI, while the physical control panel is optional. Although it is very nice to have a physical control panel for a larger production, so you can have all the things laid out the way you like it and at the reach of your fingertips. Now, before we go into the UI, let's review some of the hardware components that Mike mentioned earlier. So in the equipment rack, we have our equipment, the rack monitor. The rack monitor is showing input to output latency being only 1 frame. So again, on the right-hand side is the actual source coming from Aja KeyPro, while left-hand side is the process video out, showing again input to output latency being only 1 frame. The server below is the KAIROS Core. This is a prototype hardware, but what is shipping is the Panasonic branded hardware. Inside is similar components. You have Intel CPU, NVIDIA GPU, Mellanox is the network card, and DeltaCast is the capture card for non-IP connectivity. Below is the leader sync generator. The sync generator is usually used to output your sync signals to your cameras, so that before they come into the switcher, they're all synced. Well, here we'll be using that same sync generator and that same reference clock. We'll output PTP to the network switch below. PTP, by the way, is precision time protocol. So in a 2110 network environment, PTP is absolutely a must, and all of the synchronization would travel onto that network link that you would have between your devices and the network switch. The network switch that you see there is from Mellanox. It could be from Arista, Cisco. Ultimately, the network switch has to be capable of managing PTP version 2, the SMPTE profile, and at the same time process the needed bandwidth that you would have. So, for example, in this switch, we have 48 25 gig ports and 8 100 gig ports. On the 25 gig ports, we have these modules from Riedel. They are small pluggable modules which has SDI or HDMI as a connector, and it converts it to IP 2110. And on the other side, it takes the ST 2110 and outputs it back to baseband signal. So more or less, they are gateway modules that are plugged directly into the network switch. So let's follow a signal. Let's say you have a SDI camera. That SDI camera goes into a gateway and converts it to 2110. Now, once it is converted to an IP stream, it's a multicast, and hence I can send that to any destinations on the network or to as many destinations on the network. So let's say that stream can go to an output module, which would be converting from ST2110 to HDMI or SDI. Or on the 100 gig side, it could go to the core, KAIROS Core, using a 100 gig copper cable. Or let's say it can go to another network switch using the fiber connectivity and offer up to 100 gig of bandwidth to have sources that can be shared, bidirectional up to 100 gigs. So in 3G, there are roughly about 32 3G sources bidirectional. So ultimately, what we are proposing here is not just an IP switcher, but also an IP router where you can be completely scalable and flexible on your I/O counts. You don't necessarily need to bring all your SDI cables into a single room. Now you can completely decentralize and put the network switches where there may be action. So, let's say in a corporate building, it could be IDFs or whatever. Ultimately, the point is that the connections now can be completely decentralized and does not need to be brought into a single core for routing. Now, the devices below that you see are from DeltaCast. Now, for those applications where IP flexibility, scalability is not necessary, we are also offering direct SDI-based connectivity through these DeltaCast modules. The core can receive up to 8 of these modules connected directly to the switcher. And these modules could be configured in SDI or HDMI input or output on the SDI side, 3G or 12G configurations. So let's say if you were to build a switcher that is simply 3G SDI based, you could have 24 in and 8 out as the IO, or 28 in and 4 out ultimately, point is you can configure the switcher by using just the STI/IO if you would not like to have complexity of IP networking and so on. Looking at the bottom of the rack, we have our gigabit Ethernet network switch. So the KAIROS core and the control, KAIROS control and the KAIROS creator is controlling the KAIROS core over gigabit Ethernet. Pretty much all of the control traffic is going on the Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet side, while the media traffic is on the high-speed network. By the way, the compressed streams are also brought into the KAIROS core over GigaE network. So there you can have your RTMP, RTSP, SRT, or NDI sources be brought in directly into KAIROS core. So you can, for example, you can bring in up to 6 SRT in, 6 and up to 2 SRT outputs, 2 NDI in and 2 NDI outputs. So total of up to 8 compressed streams can be brought directly into KAIROS, and up to 4 compressed streams can be sent out. Now, the Aja Keypros that you see there is what I'm using as my sources. So throughout the demo, you will see some of those sources show up and be visible in the multi-views and the UI. Now, the camera feed that you're looking at is also being driven from KAIROS. So here I can choose to send you the camera feed that you're looking at right now, or I can send you the multi-view 1. So here's a multi-view 1, or let's say if you'd like to have multi-view 2, the point is we can output multi-views directly from KAIROS to any of the 16 outputs it has. So let's go forward and take a look at the UI. Now, when you power up the UI for the first time, this is what it opens with. So under the control tab, you have 2 decks here. So you have a lower deck and you have an upper deck. The lower deck currently is controlling a scene called KAIROS meeting, while the upper deck is controlling another scene. And it could be designated to be whatever you like it to be. So on the KAIROS meeting, I have my program bus, my preview bus, my transition selections, cut, auto, and a soft fader. And again, you have 2 of them, so you can control 2 scenes at the same time. By the way, you can have multiple instances of this UI, so you can deploy this, at the venue or at a remote location, or let's say if you like to have multiple operators control the core, you can do that as well. Now, typical switcher specs you would have is MEs and keyers, and then you have macro function to control the MEs and keyers to really make different looks, right? So you have 2-box or 4-box or sidecar, lower third, and so on. If the goal is to make those different looks, why do I need to worry about how many MEs and keyers we have? And hence, Panasonic has introduced a new sort of a processing engine that is layer-based. So in scenes, what we have is, let's say, my output. So I have my 32:9 output, my 16:9 output, my KAIROS meeting, that's the feed that you're looking at right now. And feeding into these outputs are my different scenes. So here's a scene called GUI multi-view 1, multi-view 2. If you like to insert a new scene, go insert new scene, give it a name, and then choose how many layers would you like to have in addition to the background. Now, again, the layers are like your keyers. How many picture-in-picture would you like to have? You can start with 6, but then later on you can add or remove to as many layers as you like. Now, each of the layer can be fully customized. So here I have my left pip, which is the pip that I have in blue, while right pip is what I have in yellow. So the left pip can be, again, customized to the point of, let's say, if you like to add any crop settings on it or change the size of it, corner pinning, luminance key, chroma key, or any variety of these effects could be added to every single layer, right? So for example, color correction could be added, again, to every single layer. Let me send you this feed so you can follow as I'm doing things. So there again, we have our 2 multi-views up top and then the UI on the bottom. The left pip, if you like to, let's say, resize, go to transform, grab one of the corners, move it around as you like. By the way, Control-Z also works. So that's quite handy to have in a production switcher in a live environment. So if you like to roll back, that's quite cool. In terms of, let's say, changing sources going to this particular pip. So below I have my cross points, and this is directly into the UI, where I can go back and edit any of these cross points, any priority, any order, or any list I like to have. So here I have those sources that are sort of pre-sorted. So I can simply click on them, and it would change my source to be whatever I designate that cross point to be. Now, if a director says, hey, can you give me a transition? Well, in a normal switcher, you would have to take, an ME, feed it into another ME, and then now you can have your transitions, but it gets a little convoluted. In this system, you can simply enable your preset bus or B bus, and there you have your, again, program bus, your preview bus, and do any transitions that you would like to have. But then one step beyond is you can enable dissolve on any single layer. So let's say on this particular layer, I will enable dissolve and choose the type of effect we would like to see for this dissolve. So you can have your mix effects, wipe effects, DVE, or a user effect like a replay wipe or a linear move. So for this demo, we will choose, let's say, push right as my DVE, and it's going to transition with 80 frames. So when I go to another cross point, you will see that I'm applying a DVE effect. So again, with this architecture, every single layer can be an ME, which is quite unique and powerful. So then the question might be, okay, what is the true limitation of the switcher? Well, in the scenes here, you can have hundreds of different look, 2-box, 4-box, whatever the different looks that you would like to have listed here. But whatever is going out to the aux outputs or the program outputs and multi-view is what the GPU is rendering it, at a given time. And that's what the GPU status bar is showing here. So currently in the lab, including the remote production that we're doing right now, there's a lot of processing that I'm doing. And with that, currently the switcher is about 32%, which is still very low considering the amount of things that I'm doing here and also in the lab. Let's look at a bit more complex scene. So we'll push this back and go to a 32x9, which is what's on the top right. On the 32x9, there's one of the scene is 3-box wide. That's what's fed to it right now. And on that scene, you have your background, which is coming from the KeyPro, 3 titles, your IT/IP scalability, flexibility, and then 3 boxes, right, center, and left. And each of these boxes, you have 3 additional layers. So in this system, since we are treating this as a single canvas, we can change the resolution to be whatever you want. It could be up to 16K by 4K. So if you wanted to have, let's say, 4K side by side, it would not be an issue at all. So in this particular layer, again, it's not just a layer, but it's also a group of layers. So when I move this together, it will move it all together. So the UI is catering to sort of both end of the user's spectrum, where somebody who may want to keep things really simple, while somebody who may want to have as complex of a show as possible. Let's look at transitions. So here I'm able to go into every single layer, and on those layers across, I can program the transitions to be whatever I want. So on any given layer, I'm able to choose available transition effects. So what we want to do is we want to take those 3 boxes out and then bring them back in at the same time. So here with 40 frames, we are able to bring those boxes out and then in. Same thing with those titles, out and then in. By the way, you can keep on building different transitions that you would like to have. And these transitions, as you build them, they appear on the control panel as well as the software UI. So you can access it directly from the main control page and don't necessarily need to go into the UI itself. We also have an audio mixer built in, where a 16 input audio mixer, audio channels can be managed to have a 1 master output. On each of the inputs, you can have up to 16 channels. So for example, here is one where I can go back and shuffle any channels that I would like to have. So let's say up to 16 in and 16 out on each of the channels, and I can shuffle it however I like. We can also add any gain or any audio delay and so on. So a basic audio mixer is also built in. Few of the things that are built in, we have ability to load stills directly into the switcher, motion clips directly into the switcher. Both stills and motion clips are uncompressed and support alpha channels. The stills you can have up to 750 megabyte, while the motion clips is up to 26 gigabyte of active usage. So you can have much more content available. It's just how much of it you are using actively. Now, we also support compressed clip players. So this will support AVC Intra or DNX HD, so your simple compressed content that you can bring it in and play it back directly from the switcher. Color mats, as many of them as you like. You can also organize it in the folder structure to have different, color mats for your different scenes. And the settings of it could be chosen between the two colors. And there's, again, a few settings that you have available to make backgrounds directly into the switcher. A few of the things that we have ability to send triggers directly from the switcher. So there I can send HTTP or IP-based command directly out to control, let's say, a robotic system. And we can also control Panasonic PTZ camera. So here we have PTZ control with preset recall. And to tie it all together, we have an extensive macro function. So on the right-hand side, there's a record button. Once you start recording, pretty much here's an example of that macro that I recorded earlier. It would record pretty much any action that you do in the UI or on the control surface and record that as an action. So later on, you can go back and edit it or, change time-based or frame-based delays and so on. So very extensive macro function is available as well. By the way, all of the control parameters that, I mentioned is controlling things in the switcher, things from switcher to outside world, but we also have a REST API available. So you can control things from outside in. So any of these macros or cross points, anything that you see on the scenes, you will be able to control all of that from an outside world in using the REST API. And the last thing I want to talk about is our multi-views. We have 2 multi-views that are built in. So each multi-view can have up to 36 pips. And each of these pips can be fully customized. You can change the size of it, location of it. You can add digital clock, analog clocks, the countdown clocks, the GPU meter, and so on. There are 10 factory-defined presets that are sort of fixed, but as a user, you can save up to 12 different unique presets. So again, here I have 12 different presets that you can change it throughout your production. Where my multi-view one here is my 16:9, multi-view 2 is my 32:9, and I can change whatever the presets I like to have throughout the production as you go forward. So overall, KAIROS is really taking advantage of 2 key advancements in technology. One is on the networking side, where we have high bandwidth network switches. Thanks to 702110, IP transport protocol, we are able to bring in IP video directly into switcher in a very flexible, scalable manner, completely decentralized manner. And then on advancements on the CPU, GPU side, where Panasonic is able to utilize Linux as the core of KAIROS Core and offer a layer-based processing engine, which has 1 frame of delay from input to output. So overall, this is what KAIROS is, and we really thank you for joining us today. For more information, please visit Panasonic.com or the number that you see listed here. Thank you again. We'll talk soon.